Welcome to Connections Live, our free Noetic webinar series designed to inform, inspire, and deepen your sense of interconnection. My name is Andrea Livingston, and I'm the Associate Director of Engagement and Partnerships here at IONS. And I am so delighted that you all have joined for our event today, Grief to Gratitude, Embracing the Inner Pathway to Healing and Peace with Stephen Ferrara. And before I bring our guest on, I would love to share that IONS is a scientific nonprofit, and the work you experience here, our research, education, global community exists because of the generosity of our members. So your support is crucial to making this exploration possible, and for that, we are so deeply grateful. If you're not a member yet, we invite you to join us. Membership includes access to hundreds of hours of videos on noetic topics and the science of consciousness, along with special online and in-person events. Becoming a member is more than accessing benefits, of course. It is a way of helping build a noetic future, and your commitment truly lights the path toward collective transformation. So feel free to go to noetic.org/give if you are inspired to become a member. Great. So let's dive in for our topic today. And I'm just really delighted to start off our program by introducing Stephen Ferrara. So I'll give a little bit of background, and then of course he'll come in and share more about his story. But Steve Ferrara has been a lifelong dedicated student of spirituality since his teenage years, and he committed his life to personal development and assisting others in their spiritual journeys. For 2 decades, he served as an instructor for the Concept Therapy Institute, which offers comprehensive courses on physical, mental, and spiritual education. And his life has also been significantly influenced by the teachings of A Course in Miracles, Eckhart Tolle, David Hawkins, and Michael Singer. And through these studies, Steve has developed a profound understanding of consciousness, presence, meditation, and inner peace. And what he'll talk about a bit more today is the tragic loss of his 23-year-old son, Christopher, followed by the passing of his wife, Allie, thoroughly challenged Steve's spiritual understanding, prompting him to delve deeper into the questions of what and who we are and seek greater clarity regarding life and death. So we'll be exploring some of the insights and practices that he discusses in his book, From Grief to Gratitude. And really, his primary goal is to offer a clear pathway for others embarking on their own journey of self-discovery, hoping to inspire them towards peace and gratitude even in the darkest times. So, Stephen, welcome. So delightful to have you here with us today, and passing the stage to you now. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Thank you. And hello to everyone. I'm coming from Delray Beach, Florida. And I saw that we have people from all over. And I am just so grateful to be a part of this IONS event. And I hope to be able to share with you today some of my journey that can certainly be of benefit to some of you as well. I I had never really intended to write a book. My background is in other areas, so I was never really an author. I did write, I journaled, but I had found that journaling, which I did very infrequently, after my son passed away, which is now 21 years ago. He was 23, and it was in just a freak car accident. He was in the car by himself. Nobody really knows exactly what happened, but uh, Christopher was my, I guess, like most sons to people, just a best friend, someone that was about as close to me as I could ever feel. I felt that, we had just a relationship based in really unconditional love. And I tell you that because much of my journey, I think, was able to be experienced because of that deep level of love that I have for my son. But my journaling was infrequent, as I said before. And then when Christopher died, literally the next morning, out of necessity, I started journaling, and I journaled daily for almost the next 20 years. I sold my business just only about 5 years ago. And when I had a little bit more time on my hands, I decided that let me take a look at this huge bookshelf of journals I had, and maybe I'll read them back. I'd never read them back up till this point. I just would write kind of stream of consciousness and then just go on and write again the next day. And it was very therapeutic, but I never read back anything. And when I started with the first journal, which was just the raw, just unimaginable grief that you feel, the sadness, the lonesomeness, and even the anger, the confusion. I wrote about that, and it's just so raw. It was so difficult to read back. I put a little bit of that in the first chapter or two of the book. But then as I read on, and it's thousands and thousands of journal entries, I started to see that I was beginning to move forward. I was beginning to, through journaling, see other dimensions, maybe of consciousness, different ways to view death, which I'm going to share with you, which really leads to ways of leading your life. I was reading through all these journals, taking notes from the journals, and by the time I was done, it was 2.5 years later. I didn't do it every single day, but it took 2.5 years, got through the about 25 journals and thousands of entries, and had taken a lot of notes. And as the universe will do for you, I bumped into a wonderful editor that edits spiritual books for authors. And we worked together then for another year. And she helped me turn this kind of first draft, very raw manuscript into something that was book worthy. As Andrea mentioned, my life has been very influenced by so many people. I've been so fortunate. My dad was a spiritual seeker. So since 10 years old, I've really been exposed to spiritual teachings. I spoke or taught for 20 years for the institute that Andrea mentioned. And I've had opportunities to just pursue teachings with some of the great contemporary, masters, I would call them, of today, whether that be Eckhart Tolle, David Hawkins, Michael Singer, and certainly Edgar Mitchell, who I don't know if you've had the opportunity, but he wrote a book. He wrote numerous books, but the one that came out more recently is called From Outer Space to Inner Space. Just want to read on the back cover to get us all on the same page with ions and how tremendously important what they do is for all of us. But it says here that as Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell hurtled earthward through space, he was engulfed by a profound sense of universal connectedness. He intuitively sensed that his presence and that of the planet in the window were all part of a deliberate, universal process, and that the glittering cosmos itself was in some way conscious. The experience was so overwhelming, Mitchell knew his life would never be the same. He then embarked on another journey that spanned several decades, an inward exploration of the ineffable mystery of human consciousness and being. Mitchell left NASA to form the Institute of Noetic Sciences, IONS, and there he initiated research into areas of study previously neglected by mainstream science and constructed a theory that could explain not only the mysteries of consciousness, but also the psychic event, the noetic experiences, the subjective experiences that we all feel. What spiritualists call a miracle, and scientists sometimes dismiss altogether. So, From Outer Space to Inner Space traces two remarkable journeys, one through space and one through the mind. And if you could bring up that first slide, Nicole. um, I, in reading all of these masters, and I certainly put so many people in that category. I've just mentioned a few, but uh, what I've been able to extract, just in a very general way, between ions and quantum science and some spiritual teachers, is that consciousness is a fundamental aspect of reality, and we humans, all 8 billion of us on this planet, are the highest species and expressions of consciousness. And the way I've seen this, and I'm saying this just to give us a background for some of the principles that I'm hopefully, or at least the ideas I'm going to share with you from my book. But consciousness is what we are all a part of. It's what makes us one. And we are its highest expression, at least it seems, on this planet. And as consciousness is coming through us, it has the ability to be aware of itself. And that's what we're moving through now. Consciousness takes on this aspect because we've evolved as a form to this point where we can now become aware of ourselves. And that just opens up such an enormous dimension of things that we can do that nothing ever before us has done. And we're at the early stage of that. Consciousness is linked to the interconnected nature of reality. Rather than seeing individuals as isolated systems, consciousness connects people with each other and the broader world, whether it's in form or not. And then lastly, consciousness is primary, expansive, and interconnected and not dependent on physical life, which is so key for my understanding to know how I was able to continue to have an ongoing and growing relationship with my son and my wife, who passed away a number of years later. So I'm going to share all of that with you. I thought it was important just to talk about what got me to this point. And I also think it's important. We all come from many different places. We've got many things that maybe we've been involved with even today. And if we could just take a minute or less, I'd like to do a little bit of a short grounding meditation so we can all let go of whatever has been going on and truly enjoy this next 30 minutes of being together. So if you would all just um, sit as comfortably as you can, and just be relaxed. Close your eyes and just feel the chair or the sofa or whatever it is that you might be sitting in. Feel your feet connected to the floor and feel Mother Nature, Mother Earth, that the healing energy that's always there coming through and coming through each of us. Take a deep breath in and a slow breath out. And again, inhale and exhale, just clearing space within us, be more open, a more open space. And now just bring your attention to the present moment, right here and right now. Notice your breath, notice your body, notice the steadiness underneath everything. And just silently say, I am here, I am grounded, I am open-minded, I am grateful, open to learning, open to a new perspective, open to what's true for you. And let's just take one more breath in and a full breath out. And gently open your eyes and feel the clarity, the calmness, and the balance. Okay, Nicole, if you would move to the next slide, please. So, in writing my book, Grief to Gratitude, Embracing the Inner Pathway to Healing and Peace, what happened for me was that I hit rock bottom. When my son died at 23, I was 49 years old. All of the study, all of the spiritual learning, everything I had consumed my life with, I questioned and wondered and in anger many times was just so upset with the universe, with God, if there is one. Just would scream at the top of my lungs. I was a runner at the time, and I'd run through these country roads just so angry at what occurred. And it literally brought me to my knees. And when I hit rock bottom, there was just a mental, emotional, and physical pain to the extent that I was bent over in pain. And at that moment, a little door opened or a little light went on in my head, and it was very dim, but I knew there had to be a better way. I knew that my thinking, my intellectual mind, which was just looping over and over and over again, had no answers. I was putting so much pressure on my thinking to come up with an answer, only to realize thought is not designed to give you answers to these major, unexpected occurrences in life. So there had to be a better way. And that's really what started me on my journey. So grief became that doorway for me. And I'm not saying that we have to all go to the depths of grief or whatever, but it seems that in this human experience, challenges are what do open bigger doors for us. Doesn't have to be that way, but that was my journey, having to absolutely hit rock bottom. But it put me, if we can go to the next slide, Nicole, it put me on a path to acceptance. I was not ever going to be able to agree, and there's very difference between agreement and acceptance. I was not going to agree that it was right that my son should be taken at 23 years old. He was at the top of his life, enjoying every aspect of it. It made no sense, but I did realize that I had to accept, and I knew from my studies that life is unfolding perfectly. Life's been unfolding for 14 billion years if there was a big bang. And we live on this little tiny planet Earth, which is in the Milky Way galaxy that has billions, hundreds of billions of stars with trillions of planets. uh, and then they say there's 2 trillion galaxies. So life has been unfolding perfectly for all of these billions of years, and it's never once asked me my opinion or for me to agree with it. So why all of a sudden, just because I'm here as a human being for 100 years, why should life be asking me whether I agree with it? That's not the point. The point is that you accept the flow of life, and then we have the ability of how we're going to respond to it. I also realized from my studies that life is not here to torture me. It would make no sense that this life would be set up to torture us with these challenges. It had to be here to teach me. And I knew that at the core of my being, I knew that life had to be here for a reason of teaching. It could not be here to torture me. That would just make no sense whatsoever. I had to find a way to allow life to flow through me. Resisting the flow of life is an absolute losing battle. That is the reason for all of our frustrations, our angers, and every other thing that we experience in life other than peace and love is when we resist. And it's a losing battle. We can't fight with life. So next slide, please. When one of the big revelations, the first one that I had as I was journaling, is when you go through grief or any major life challenge, you are so focused on yourself and how it's affecting you and poor me. And you can go into a pretty good victimhood experience. But as I was journaling one day, and it was only a couple of months in, I just started journaling and realized that, you know what, I can look at this from my son's side of this. I can look at this as this is his journey. This is not about me. This is about him. He lived 23 years, which I was so grateful to have him for 23 years. And then his destiny was to continue to move on in his journey. And I love him, always supported him in his physical life. Why would I not support him in whatever was going on from this point on? I may not understand it, but I can support and continue to love him, uh, on his journey. So as I realized that, my journaling began to take a bit of a turn. And I started to write about what can be as opposed to what could have been. My writing many times in the past, in the depths of grief, is I could have been partner with me. It could have been, I could be playing golf. I could be having a cup of coffee. I could be doing a million things with him. But it's all imagination. That means nothing. It has no basis in reality. But what can be was a whole new way for me to look at this. And what could be is that I can have an ongoing and a growing relationship with my son. And I knew that that was the case. It was going to be a bit different. I didn't have him in front of me to give him a hug, but I did have my journaling and my meditation and other ways where I could feel his presence. And I write about many different experiences of that in the book. Uh, and I also learned in writing and journaling about seeing this from Chris's side that the love I feel for my son and the love I feel for anyone in my life, my friend, my families, whoever it might be, the love I feel is the love I'm sharing. It's not the love that they're giving back to me. Love is about giving. It's not about getting. And that's sometimes where we get a little bit confused. Love is about giving. And as long as I'm sharing that with my son in this case, then I still feel the same level of love that I ever felt because as I share it, that's how I feel it. And I realized that love is a bond at a very deep spiritual level. Anyone that you love, it's so far beyond the physical and the mental dimension of our lives. It's at a much, much deeper level. It's a spiritual level, and that's a level that continues on. So, what happened as I continued to journal about this is that I realized that my son was not only my son, but he was my spiritual partner. And I began to refer to him that way as my spiritual partner. And he became the window to my spiritual reality. So when I thought about Christopher, when I journaled to Christopher, when I meditated, he was the window that continues to bring me into my more spiritual essence. And what I realized, even more so, is that so many of us think that the opposite of death is life. There's life and death. And that is completely wrong. The opposite of death is birth. If something's born, it's going to die. It has nothing to do with life. Life is ongoing. It's been here long before us. It's going to continue long after us. But in this parenthesis in time, for lack of a better way of saying it, we are born and we die. It might be 100 years. It might be 23 years. It might be 110 years. But it's a parenthesis in time because life is eternal. If you could move to that next slide, Nicole. What I began to realize is that all the power uh, that I have and we each have within us is beyond thought. As I've mentioned, the thought and the intellect, it's really not designed to have the capacity to give us answers to unexpected major life challenges. It's just not designed that way. It's designed for planning. It's designed for looking at the past or the future. It's really not designed to be in the present moment, but it's a wonderful tool if we use it that way. But the way to use it that way is that we have to realize that thoughts and emotions are not my identity. We're far greater than our thoughts and emotions. And as many of these great teachers have taught us, just by being able to observe our thoughts and our emotions are clear proof that we are not our thoughts and emotions, because if we were, we wouldn't be able to observe them. So we are something far greater. And I started to look at new tools, if we can call them that. Uh, Thinking is a tool that we rely on way too often. What I was realizing that silence, surrendering, and just allowing became a much more powerful tool to be able to cool my jets, so to speak, to get those thoughts, to get all of that overstimulation that we all have in our lives, to just calm down, turn that volume down, and to be able to enjoy the beauty and the power of silence is so critical for us to begin, for us to be able to understand that there are other dimensions. If thought is just taking up everything that we do, and we're being stimulated constantly, which makes thought and emotion continually come up. We've got to find time to have quiet and silence, and also to surrender whatever experiences we're having, to just let them go through us. They're just experiences. And as things come up that we that hurt a little bit, in Sanskrit they call it samskaras. As they come up, we look at them and say thank you, and you let them go. We surrender them, uh, and just allowing life to flow through us. Other tools, again, if you want to call that tools, some of our old programming is, we jump to anger, we can jump to blame. What I was finding is that I could look at people with more compassion and more forgiveness, and look at myself that way, I was able to open up other dimensions of my life. And, and then finally, judgment and opinions, all of these things that we have within ourselves that we somehow feel that we have to defend and that they make us who we are, they have nothing to do with who we are. An opinion is an opinion. I have one and everybody else has one. Big deal. But acceptance of everyone, acceptance of yourself, and acceptance of others. So these were the new tools that I was working with. And one of the most important that I found when I was working with either myself or other people is, if I was in a challenging situation and I didn't know which way to go, I'd quiet my mind and I would just ask the simple question, what would love do now? And when I ask that question, the mind automatically shifts from whatever direction it was going. It slows down, and now it's got to think about this question you just put into it. What would love do now? It slows everything down. And for me, I find that it offers me options that I may never have thought of previously. So this tool of what would love do now, I use it many, many, many times a day. And I can tell you, it's like a safety net. It stops me from going down the wrong path for too long. And then I realize, okay, there's another way to go. And what ultimately is that gratitude, I found, for everything in our life, not just for the things we love. We need to be grateful for the things that are wonderful in our life, and we need to be grateful for the challenges in our life, because those become the potential accelerators of our growth. They may not feel good, but it's just like working out. I hate going to the gym. It hurts, but I like what I'm able to achieve. And gratitude is exactly that. When we're going through the challenge, it may not feel good, but by having gratitude for it, by looking at it as a learning opportunity, we can be grateful that we've been given this gift, something that we can handle, and something that has potential of us learning so much from. So gratitude is the absolute great healer. If we could move to the next slide. So what I found as I continued is we can live from the inside out or from the outside in. And our societies are very much based on getting us to live from the outside in. Not getting us, but we choose to live from the outside in. Whether it's stimulation from all of the devices, stimulation from the crazy news that goes on in this world, stimulation from whatever. We can live from the outside in. Everything can be based about, looking at the outside, how people think of me, what I look like. And, that's a way of living life. But what I found is that's not a peaceful way of living life. It's a very stressful way of living life. It's unfortunate that so many people, probably the majority, live that way. But we can live from the inside out. And the way I found for myself that I was able to do that is realizing that I have responsibility for how I'm going to choose to respond to anything that's occurring in my life. If it's somebody that I'm a traffic jam and I'm annoyed at the person in front of me, I don't have to go down that road. I can choose to look at it in a different way. I can choose to enjoy the ride. I can make many choices. It doesn't have to be the one of getting angry, all the way to having a loss in our life or a major life challenge. how we respond to it is an enormous, I call it a superpower, because it gives us the ability to experience our life the way we want to experience it. The choices we make will give us the experience that we have in our life. And that's what becomes our reality. One of the things that I realized is that too often I would look at the content of a situation, which is the circumstances at hand, basically. And if I could just expand that a little bit to start to realize the context of the overall situation, I was able to see with a more opened, expanded mind how to look at a situation, and I could respond in a completely different way than if I was just looking at the content of what was occurring. I was realizing also, as I said before, the love I share is the love I feel. That's an inside out way to live. That's being able to be with a person and no matter what they're saying, to truly love them for what and who they are. We're all connected. We're all spiritual beings. We're all on a path. We're all exactly where we need to be for our growth. And to be able to know that the love I feel is the love that I share. It has nothing to do with what the other person is doing. And then a very important key point that I understood as I went on in my life is that life happens by me. Life doesn't happen to me. And it's a very important attitude, again, once again in our life, to realize that whatever is happening in my life is happening by me. It is not happening to me. I am not a victim of any person, place, thing, or circumstance because I have the superpower to choose how I want to respond. And finally, I realized that life loves us. And even when loss and major life challenges occur in our life, as I said before, they become accelerators to our growth and our awakening. And so, coming back to my book, Grief to Gratitude, and speaking specifically about my son and my wife having passed away and moved on in their journey, uh, these were not um, fun things to move through, but I understood that these are challenges in my life that were given to me at the exact time that I needed them for me to be able to continue to grow. And I am a student in this lifetime. I will always be a student. The only reason for the human experience, in my opinion, is that it's a classroom for us to learn. There could be no other reason, in my opinion. It's certainly not to go to work and have kids and then die. It's about something far greater. The purpose is so important as to why we're here. Uh, and why we're here is to continue to learn, continue to become more understanding of the beauty and the oneness that we all have within us, and frankly, to help each and every one of us continue our journey home. So I will just end with a couple of journal prompts that are in my book that I felt might be helpful. If you don't journal, I highly suggest it doesn't have to be daily, but journaling is a way to express yourself and just be able to get to the core of what's going on within you. It's wonderful to talk to people, and I was very happy, very lucky to have some great support in my life. But then you're dealing with their responses and how they feel. Journaling is just something that's pure, something that comes from within. And if you just put a pen to paper, which is what I did most of the time, didn't even know what I was going to start to write about, but I just started writing. And the next thing you know, a couple of sentences in, all of a sudden, it's just a stream of consciousness. And that's where all of what I learned in my journey is shared in the book. And it comes from the most inner part of me that it could. So I really never used journal prompts so much. I always felt that if I just put a pen to paper and start writing, it's going to work. But journaling prompts can help. And I'll just read one or two to you that are in the back of my book. One of them is to commit to journaling as a new language and expression. Journaling truly is a different language. It's a way of expressing, as I say, uh, some of our most inner truth that we might not be able to get out otherwise, and it gets us closer to meaning and truth. So write about what you're holding on to that no longer serves you and how your life might shift if you release these feelings, whatever they might be, from the smallest to the biggest. If you start writing about them and realizing that I don't need to continue to react to them, I can literally, I can see another way of dealing with this and then write about how that might feel. So that was one journal prompt. The other one I would say is, this is something that is so important that we should all do every single day, is write about three things that you're grateful for each day. If we can start a gratitude journal, and whether they're small things, whether they're large things, whether they're the challenges in your life, whether they're the wonderful things in your life, but let them, center around your growth, the love you feel, and how you're living in this kind of new normal. If you're going through a challenge or you have the loss of someone, and how you can move through this new normal with a grateful heart, being grateful for the time period that you had the person, and then being grateful for the experience, the ongoing experience, with all that's embedded into that experience for us to continue to learn. It's been 21 years since my son died, and about 8 or 10 years since my wife passed away. And I can just tell you, there's not a day that goes by that I do not learn from those experiences. And last thing I would tell you is that when you do have an experience to that extent, I realized that I would be doing an injustice and I would be disrespecting my son if my only reaction to him dying and my wife dying was that I was going to go into the corner and just feel sorry for myself. It made no sense, and it would be disrespect to that level of such a traumatic experience. There had to be a bigger, much more important reason for that to have occurred in my life, and that's what made me pursue the inner path to healing and peace, which I can tell you I am still on. I'm still walking. We're all walking on it together. And I hope that I've helped in some way today. And, um, I'm here to answer any questions, I think, at this point, right, Andrea?
That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Stephen. Maybe we can take a moment. Actually, I see that Edgar Mitchell quote there. I don't know if you
Yeah,
wanted to
you know
read
what?
that.
Nicole, if you could put that back up, I just thought it was so appropriate to end with Edgar Mitchell the way I began. But if a quote that he put out, which is just, it's right in his book, and he says, "I've come to believe evolution has progressed such that we must now assume a large measure of conscious control in our own evolutionary process as a in our own evolutionary process as human volition is in fact a fundamental characteristic of nature." So I mean, he just puts it as clearly as you can that, we're so fortunate to be a species that can actually have a conscious participation in the continued evolution of this consciousness flowing through us. And um, Edgar Mitchell could not have said it better. And maybe that's a good segue to go back to the questions, Andrea. So, yeah, thank you for reminding me about that, that last slide.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Stephen. And we'll send out these links that people see here so that people can follow up with your book. And I see lots of hearts coming in from the emojis. So maybe we can just take a moment to feel the gratitude for your sharing, Stephen, and for what you've brought to us today through your own very personal journey and bringing it to learnings for this community. So just want to say thank you for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
And as mentioned, we do have time for your questions if you are here on the webinar. I see some beautiful comments and questions coming in, and so feel free to put any of your questions into the Q&A box and we'll get started. So I'll start with a question from Tim that says, having lost some of those dear loved ones, do you now feel at peace with death? If so, what was the main factor that enabled you to do that?
Yeah. Well, it certainly has changed my entire perspective on death and therefore life. Uh, I think, I would say that I really have no fear of death. If there's any fear, it's that I want to be able to die peacefully. But I do see it through the experience I had with my son and my wife as just an ongoing journey. I think when I die, I'm just going to wake up like I wake up every morning from a dream and be in a different place. And I don't know if you carry your individuality with you, but I think we carry the things that are really meaningful that we learned in this life. So yeah, I certainly look at death very differently. Um, and I'm a little weird like that, I think, because when I hear, that people have died suddenly in whatever way that may be, in some ways I celebrate that for them, looking at it from their side. They moved on in their journey in a very easy way, maybe not even being aware of it, like my son. It seemed as though he was perfectly fine. The car went into a river and he drowned, and he showed no signs of trauma. So I learned to realize to be happy for that and celebrate that he was able to move on in his journey. And I see death that way for myself as well.
Thank you for that comment. Yeah. Yeah, we have a few different questions asking if there are specific tools that you use to maintain the communication with your loved ones that are no longer embodied. And yeah, a few people are asking, what was your main way of communicating and any tools of communicating with loved ones who've passed?
Yeah, the communication it's a different type of communication. Having a human body where we can speak to each other certainly makes it easier. But it's learning a different language, and there are many. For me, and it continues to be journaling, is just a way that I continue to have this ongoing and growing relationship. But there'll be times that I can just sit back and meditate, quiet my mind, and be with the feeling of my son and the feeling of my wife. I can talk with them. Um, and could it all be imagination? Who knows? I don't even care anymore. It is what it is. It's an experience I'm having that feels like love and it feels like communication. So it's the two biggest tools are the journaling and then the quiet time, finding a place where you can be totally quiet and just allow your mind to be open because I think our loved ones, the ones that we truly love, are no further away than, maybe right next to us, a little thin veil between us and them, and they're always there. And the relationships are truly within us. That's where the relationship is carried. If you were to read my book, I talk about how I realized that I only had a very slim level of a relationship with my son, even though he was my son and I was his dad. And you think you knew everything about each other. I learned so much about my son after he passed away from all his friends and family and the relationships and the experiences they had. So, the relationship I have with my son, Christopher, is the one that exists within me. And I can quiet my mind, I can go into silence, and I can feel that at any time. And and those are really probably the two major tools, the journaling and just finding quiet time to be present and to be with them and feel the love.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you for those practices. And I'm also seeing several people in the chat who've expressed that they've also lost a son or a daughter, and also the meaningfulness of being able to have ways of connecting, and also the grief process. So yeah, just feels really relevant. And someone else puts in the chat that having lost a lot of family and friends and several in horrific traumatic manner, my heart feels broken. I'm trying to live with love and joy, but my heart never seems to be quite full, and I carry a deep sadness. What have you found most helpful to find the positive and find the happy heart. I know you spoke to some of these practices, but curious if you have anything else to say when we're really in the depth of that place of grief.
Yeah, and I the depths of grief and sadness, loneliness, confusion, anger, it's all what we need to go through. And the only way through it is through it. We can't go around it. We can't deny it. We can't bury it. We can't just stop thinking about it. You've got to move through it. We've got to feel that. I remember one day I was in my sunroom and I was just looking out the window and I had such a heavy, heavy feeling of sadness. And it just occurred to me for the first time that, you know what? This sadness is something I feel. It's not something that's going to kill me. I can feel this sadness. In fact, I feel this sadness. I am not going to let that sadness go up into my head where it mixes with thought and then it becomes drama and it becomes a storyline and it becomes, what if and could have and should have and would have. But the feeling is what's pure. When it goes into your thinking doesn't know what to do with it, as I said before. So thinking just forms a loop and starts creating stories that have no basis to them. And that's just a dramatic world that we all get lost in at times, and that's all okay too. But when you feel that feeling of sadness, just feel it. For me, it's usually in my gut, and I just feel it. And it's okay. Sadness, I realize, is not going to kill me. Anger is not going to kill me. I'm not going to jump out the window because I'm sad. I'm going to just feel it. And as I would feel it, I realized that I could continue to move on in my day. I might have been feeling sad, but I could continue to function. And eventually, it might have taken a minute, an hour, a day, or whatever, but it evaporates and it just kind of burns itself out. It's like a piece of coal. If you just keep feeling it, it just burns and burns and then it's burnt out. It doesn't have any more energy left. And so, not easy. I can tell you that it's easier, at least for the short term, to feel like you push it aside or, deny it but feel it. And we've got to move through it. And that's what enables it to really burn itself out eventually. And I'd write about it and all that type of thing as well. But grief is real. I mean, those are feelings that have to be felt. They have to be let go. They're part of the experience. And if you look at it as the pain is part of the process, it's a very different way of looking at it. Pain is part of the process. It's not something to push aside. Be grateful that I feel pain because it's part of my process of moving forward. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much. That feels like a just a helpful, like kind of map along the way of when we're going into these territories, knowing we have to go through and what are some of the ways we can be with some of the depths of those emotions. So it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm looking at the questions that have lots of likes on them, and we have a question that many people have liked that asked from Teresa, did you and your wife process your grief together or separately when Christopher died?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. I have probably a whole chapter on that. My wife, Allie, and I grieved very differently. But what we realized literally from the first day is that we needed each other more than ever. I know that, there's statistics out there that when a child dies, there's a large percentage of people that, get divorced because they can't handle it. They remind each other too much of what occurred. With Allie and I, we needed each other more than ever. We'd grown up together. I met Allie when she was 20 years old. I was 21. As I said, I was 49 when my son died. She was 48 or 7. And we'd come through so much of life and we just needed each other. I leaned on Allie. I'll have to say, Allie was the stronger of the two, certainly early on. But over time, my grieving, I was able to express, as I say, through journaling. And I'm an expressive person. And I was fortunate to have people in my life, including Allie, where I could express. I needed to talk about it, and I needed to talk early on. I just wanted to talk about Christopher and hear more stories about him from people, and that's all great. Uh, Allie, on the other hand, she kept a little bit more in. Even when her and I would talk, we'd take a walk, and I had a need to talk about what I was feeling. And Allie was good for about 10 minutes, and then she'd say, I really can't talk anymore. And it was okay. I respected that. I think that's the most important thing. We all grieve differently, even husbands and wives. We grieve differently. We've got to respect the way we each grieve. I respect it totally the way Allie grieved. She transmuted some of her grief through being a tennis player. She got on the tennis court and just channeled that energy out of her physically. I would do that at times, but I was more one that just needed to express. I didn't want to even get involved with the circumstances of all that happened. There was a police investigation because of the way it all occurred. And I didn't really care because it wasn't going to bring my son back. And on the other hand, Allie was very interested in every detail. When we got the police report, she studied it. I've never read the police report. It's 21 years later, and I don't even know where it is, and I've never read it. And now that Allie's not here, I don't even know where to find it. And I could care less because it's not going to help me in my journey, and it's not going to bring Christopher back. So, again, very different ways of grieving, but respect each other and know that it will bring you even closer because you're the only two people, as husband and wife, as parents. If you lose a child, you're the only two people that had that exact experience. There's nobody else in the world that's had that exact experience. And so you really need the strength of each other.
Mm, such a good point. Also, that the ways of grieving and how we can respect that and also come together if as partners if someone loses a child. So thank you for that. We've got a question from Daniel who's asking some more specifics about your journaling practices and some practicalities. He's wondering about journaling on a schedule, or do you have a free form timing, a certain amount of time? Is there kind of a location or setting, like a specific place? And then he's even asking things like bound journals or pen versus pencil. So just kind of in your whole journey of this journal practice that brought so much insightfulness into your own process, are there any specifics that you would share with our audience today?
Yeah, early on, most of my journaling was done early in the morning. I'd get up early before anybody else did, and I'd have that quiet time for myself. And um, some people find that it's a discipline that's hard to, like any discipline to do on a consistent basis. Um, I I was fortunate that I enjoyed the process. I looked forward to it. Um, I found that it was just time to be with my son, and how great was that? That was precious, sacred time, and it might have been for 5 minutes, or it could have been for 30 minutes. But it was normally done in the morning. Um, there were other times that, I felt a need. I just needed to express depending on what I was going through. And, it could be mid-afternoon, it could be evening, but it was usually almost always a ritual, if you'd call it that, in the morning. Um, in terms of the type, when I look at my journals, I have everything from, bound journals to, there's some beautiful journals out there. Um, and I always just went with the ones with the blank pages. I really didn't need to be prompted or anything like that. I just wanted something that felt good when I held it. There's beautiful leather journals. I have some that are just notebooks. I have, like I say, probably 25 journals. They're all different types. Um, I would normally have a pen or two that I really like just because they wrote more easily. But what I'd say is it should become, a discipline or a ritual in your life, whether it's morning or evening, whatever kind of person you are. And it might just be sometimes a sentence or a paragraph, or you hit on something and you start writing away. And and that's what I would find. I would just, hit on something and keep writing. And then not every time, but that's where I came up with these like, revelations. I've never had an experience, I don't think, like Edgar Mitchell had when he was coming back to Earth, to that level of feeling of oneness, but in a lesser way. I would get those feelings and those little revelations of understanding that helped me continue to see this experience in a better way, in a more healthy way. So yeah, journaling is something I highly suggest. It doesn't even have to be daily, whatever works for you, but it's better than not doing it. I think everyone should take time to journal because you'll really reach into a part of you that you might not tap into otherwise.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. I saw someone say this is such a great advertisement for journaling or, prompt to remember to come back to this practice. And yeah, it's such a profound practice that we all have access to. So we have time for just maybe one or two more questions. This question comes from someone, an anonymous attendee, that says, "What about someone who is afraid to let the sadness, quote, burn out, as if it means forgetting or even dishonoring the deceased loved one?" So maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a good question because we are. Um, sometimes when you're moving forward, you can feel that you're, as you say, dishonoring someone, excuse me, or you're not. Um, you know, in our society has programmed in over all of the eons of time that, unless you truly are feeling that depths of sorrow, then you don't really love that person as much. What I would say, and this is for me, it's kind of like somebody saying, if you're not jealous of that person, then you don't love them. That to me makes no sense at all. And also that we have to continue to stay in grief in order to honor someone that's passed on. The way to honor someone for me is to continue to share my love with that person and to continue to support them on their ongoing journey. And those are, to maybe the society might look like you're cold. That might not, it might look like, geez, you're not grieving. It's only been 2 years. Uh, and it's just not the case. I just think we've got it backwards in our society. Some cultures celebrate when someone dies. Uh, I think that's closer to the truth than the way society, at least in the USA. I don't know how it is around the world, but in America, we have no training in a healthy way to move forward when someone dies. We need a new way of being able to look at death. And that new way is to be able to continue to love that person no different than whether they're here in their human form or whether they're gone from their human form. This is just, a meat coat that we put on. It's some skin and bones that we're given as a vehicle to get around with while we're in this human experience. It's not who we are. And I can tell you, when I saw my son, at the hospital, laying in the bed, and he was dead. That was not Chris. That was just his body. Christopher, whoever the essence of Christopher is, continued on, and he continued on in his journey. He had a great life as a in his human experience. I can only believe his life had to continue to be greater as he grew and learned on his journey. So that's what made me feel the love and continued support for him, and it just helped me move past some of the sadness. That I still get sad? Absolutely. And as I said before, I learned to just feel it, and it got to be less and less. I still can feel sad today. I mean, I read my own book, the first chapter, I can't even get through. It just, it's because it's about the circumstances and, and I can feel sadness, but it's okay. So I feel sad. Big deal. I'm going to be okay. It's going to move through, you know. And I don't mean to minimize people's feelings. I'm using myself as an example. I literally, if I feel sad, it's like, okay, I feel sad. I honor it, but big deal. It's not who I really am anyway. It's just going to pass through.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Stephen, for the depth of your experience and bringing it forward to us as a community, as this noetic community. Just so grateful for what you've offered here. We have uh, some links in the chat that we'll send out if people do want to follow up and read your book and engage with the journal prompts more deeply. And I'll have just a couple closing announcements, but is there anything else you'd like to share just as we're ending here, Stephen?
I just want to thank you all, for listening, for attending. I hope my only hope in writing this book, as I said, I never intended to write it, but as I wrote it and as it became a book, is to really ease some of the unnecessary suffering that we go through as human beings when we go through major life challenges and loss. We suffer so much more than we need to. And I hope my book provides somewhat of a pathway for how to move through that and to make that suffering a little more manageable and hopefully a lesser period of time. It doesn't ever mean you're going to forget that person or persons. It just means you're not going to suffer over it. You can still love them, feel sad if you have to, but the suffering is unnecessary. And I hope I can help with that.
Mm, really beautiful. Thank you so much, Stephen. And if people here on the call want to continue this conversation, we have what we call Noetic Global Gatherings. These are for our members, and it's a time to discuss some of the ideas that we talk about here in our Connections Live and bring them into breakout groups. So we will be going with this theme that we've talked about today on consciousness after death, transforming grief and life. So if you are interested, if you're a member, come join us on February 27th at 11 a.m. Pacific. If you're not a member, please consider joining and we will send that email to you. So we hope that this conversation will continue together in our breakout group so you all can discuss with each other. And we have our next free Connections Live Mind to Mind, what science reveals about telepathic bonds. So ION scientists Helene Wabe, Dean Radin, and Sitaro Tadero share findings from mind to mind study and introduce the HALO project, research exploring whether mind to mind connection can be measured and how technology may help deepen human connection. So we hope you will join us for this next free webinar on March 6th. And we are looking for people for a new research project around light language. So we are excited and curious and open heart and looking for curious, open-hearted explorers to join our new light language study. This research is open to English-speaking, psychologically healthy adults who have personally experienced uttering light language outside of a religious context. So if that sparks your curiosity, you can learn more about the study and how to participate in the link that we're putting in the chat right now. And as we come to a close for today's session, we'd like to take a moment to share how your support makes this work possible for IONS. Your gift plays just an essential role in supporting a noetic future. And if you found today's offering meaningful, we warmly invite you to go to noetic.org/give. And there you can become a member or make a contribution to help sustain and grow this mission. So thank you again, Stephen. Thank you to this wonderful, vibrant, curious community, everyone who came for your questions and your comments. It's really amazing to have you all here and a part of this discussion. So thank you, everyone. Wishing you a beautiful rest of your day and until soon.